So this week's question is, what if video game items existed in real life? And the way we did this was we basically just picked video games that we've played in the past or that we liked, and specifically looking at video games that have interesting items in them. And we just picked items that we thought would be interesting if they existed in real life, and we wanted to look at the impact that they'd have in the real world. So Ben, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I went with the game series that has lots of very fun items, but that is the Legend of Zelda series. And specifically, I went with the HOOKSHOT, which is it's a recurring item. It's been in a few of the Zelda games. That is kind of like a grappling hook. That's kind of the sort of go-to way to like explain it. But instead of just being something you would sort of twirl and throw up and hook onto something and pull yourself, it launches out of a gauntlet and attaches something and then drags you up to it.
It's basically like the Batman gun thing.
Yeah, kind of like that, like the grappling gun in Batman. Yeah. It can also like pull things to you sometimes, so it's not just pull you to things. It pulls. It pulls is kind of the main takeaway there. There's pulling.
Pullage.
So it's really my first question when I started approaching this was, would this even work in real life? Like, is this a thing that you'd actually do? And I was actually very fortunate. There was a YouTube video I found, because I wanted to figure out, like, how much it would weigh and how fast it goes and all that. But if I could avoid it, I wanted to avoid doing the actual, like frame counting work stuff. Yeah, exactly. The actual work. You can put it that way. And there was a great YouTube video I found by this guy or guys called The Game Theorists that did a lot of that like background, like, measuring things against other objects in the world to figure out how big they were. They helped me out a lot. And so they figured out, basically, it has to be made out of steel, just because it can go into, like, wood and, like, penetrate wood. So that narrows down very heavily what metals it could be. And we know that it can work underwater, so it can't be something that rusts. So pretty much the only thing that really works is steel. And they figured out the hook itself has to weigh about 21 pounds. But then also, the chain, obviously, has weight. And they figured out the chain is about 65 feet long. This was in Ocarina of Time. That's the one they specifically used, which is actually the long shot, not just like the regular hook shot, but, close enough.
Is it longer?
It is longer.
Like, does it have a longer reach?
I think it's roughly twice as long is what it says in the game.
Huh.
Like,
okay.
Definitively. Like, for some reason, the description points out that it's twice as long as the hook shot. I don't know why. But it's basically a 65-foot long, half-inch diameter steel chain with a 21-inch weight on the end. And that chain also weighs another 169 pounds. So you're looking at about 190 pounds.
Wow.
That is really heavy.
Which is really heavy, which is also really impressive because Link just like runs around with it in one hand.
I was going to say,
time.
like carries it with the 15 other items he has on him.
Right, exactly. Like clearly guy must be jacked, but sort of the issue we run into here is that we also know pretty much how like fast it can go, because that 65 feet, it travels in about 1 second. And 65 feet is about 20 meters, so that's 20 meters per second. And most importantly, after the first like tenth of a second, it moves at a constant speed. So all the acceleration is right in that first tenth of a second, which means that the acceleration is about 200 meters per second squared, which is roughly 20 times the acceleration of gravity, and around double the like turning acceleration of a fighter jet. And now that we know the mass of the chain and the acceleration, we can find the force of it, like when it fires out, which is a little over 17,000 newtons, which is just under the bite force of an adult great white shark. And very importantly, because of, Newton's third law of motion, which always comes back to bite us in this show, that same force is going to get applied to you when you use the hook shot. And it's another important frame of reference for forces. Human bones start breaking roughly around 12,000 newtons. So just when initially firing it, you're probably going to break most of the bones in your arm.
But is it worth it though?
Well, so here's the other problem, is that that's just actually launching it, because this is going to hit something, and it's going to attach, and then it's going to pull you with roughly the same acceleration.
So it's going to break your arm and then pull it off.
So importantly, it's probably not strong enough to actually pull your arm off. It will dislocate it, but probably not actually tear it off. So you have that going for you.
Well, that's good.
The one bad thing is that in addition to this like multiple bone breaks and dislocation, you will experience for that tenth of a second roughly 20 Gs, which is a lot. It probably won't kill you.
Really?
Apparently, there's been like obviously a lot of training with regards to like spaceflight and stuff with how many G's that, you know, humans can live through. And with training, a human can sustain 20 G's for about 10 seconds before death. So you probably won't die. However, in those same experiments, they found that with about 1 second at 20 G's, you would get like permanent spinal damage. And also that was enough G's to like start breaking the blood vessels in your eyes and causing permanent blindness.
Jesus.
All right.
So long story short, the hookshot you should probably not use because it will probably, if not actually kill you. Because we're also, by the way, assuming that like when you fire this, you don't just go flying backwards into a wall or something, which is probably what would happen. But even if it doesn't kill you, it probably is something you would prefer. Let's be honest here. But we're going to sort of take all that aside. Now that we've done the less fun thing, let's do the more fun thing. What if it actually did work? What if we actually did have this chain, you know, that could just pull us 65 feet at a time very quickly?
And not critically or injure you.
Right, exactly. We're gonna go with that hypothetical. I'm actually really sad. I don't think it's actually all that useful, guys.
It's funny you said that because originally I was going to talk about the hook shot, and after your whole scientific explanation, I'm glad I didn't, because I would have not gone through all that, got all the information, and that was actually really fascinating. But that was part of the reason I ended up not laying on that one, because I was like, how useful would that really be?
It just doesn't do much, like because 65 feet isn't actually all that far.
Yeah.
So like, and like you can't really like scale a building with it. Well, I was trying to figure out. So you could go upstairs marginally faster if it's one of those staircases with like it loops around like the banister all the way around. You could like go staircasing like side to side, kind of. But that seems very dangerous and not all that, you know, helpful. The one place where it could be fun and possibly useful is if you live somewhere with a lot of balconies. You could kind of be like really slower, awkward Spider-Man, which isn't great, but you can still condense that sentence into your Spider-Man, which I think is good enough. So you have that. Honestly, I think the most useful thing I thought of was, so I live in a 3-story building, and I park back behind it, and there's not an elevator in my building, and getting my groceries is really annoying, but there's a window at the end of the hallway, and I could open the trunk of my car and hookshot my groceries back up to me. Now, you might be saying, this seems like a really boring use for a hookshot, and I agree with you, but man, I really tried.
Well, it's funny to me that you're thinking vertically, and it's funny because when I think of Zelda, you know, I'm 35, so like I think about top.
Oh, you're thinking like Link to the Past.
Yeah, and like when you watch him do it in Link to the Past, you're honestly wondering, like, do his feet even leave the ground, or is he just like dragging? You know, like so. So
I was trying to figure that out too. So you can go 65 feet in a second.
Yeah,
which is good. Like obviously that's fast, but you have to be able to hook onto something.
Yeah.
And then once you get there, you have to like reset and do it again. So like, I wouldn't want to do that for long distances.
Could you put on like roller skates and then hook onto the ground and like launch yourself forward with the roller skates on?
Oh, that seems very dangerous.
It does seem really dangerous. See, I'm thinking, where my head goes is like, you know, if you're at like a cocktail party or like a club or something, and like across the room you saw some really good looking girl, you know, you could just like hook shot. I mean, how awesome would you look? You know,
just do like the scorpion, get over here.
Yeah,
like.
Exactly. Just like you're just kind of eyeing this person up, and then seconds later you're right next to him. Like, how impressive would that look?
that works. That does work.
You know,
and that's
forget about your groceries.